G'day guys, Clint here, recording episode number 69 of The Full Landscape. We are lucky enough to have Monina Gilbey here from the Glenelg Golf Club. She's the Biodiversity Manager. For me, that wasn't something that completely made sense, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to do the podcast today. When I said it didn't make sense, I don't fully understand what someone in that role would do. So I took this opportunity to spend about an hour and a half talking to Monina about what she does at the Glenelg Golf Club and then what led her into getting that role. This is a great podcast for anyone that's working in the biodiversity space or that might be looking at moving into the biodiversity space. Monina goes into detail about some of the pathways that you could take to get into those roles, and also some pretty helpful tips and tricks that you might be able to take up at home or in your landscape business to help try and improve biodiversity in your area, even if it's just one step. So thank you for your attention. If you want to get in touch with Monina, we'll put her details in the description below. But other than that, I'll leave it with you. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. So, Monina, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. I love doing podcasts, and it's we don't do enough, so it's good when we've got someone that's willing to do it. For the audience at home watching and listening, if you could just give us a bit of a elevator pitch or 3 minutes about what you do, and then I guess what you did to lead up to doing what you do now.
Yeah. Okay. All in the 3 minutes.
You can take 15. Mate, I've got nowhere to be, so you do whatever you need to.
So I'm the Biodiversity Manager at Glenelg Golf Club. So I started off there as the Vegetation Officer, and then Tim Warren decided he needed more resources in veg management, so he brought on two people. We've got Ben Rolton from Royal Sydney, who's our Vegetation Officer / horticulturalist, and an apprentice, Harry Morby, who's a conservation land apprentice. Conservation ecosystems, I think they call it now. And so I'm the Biodiversity Manager, kind of overseeing that team. So I do a lot of the administration involved around plant watering and planning, and like applying for grants. So we got a Green Adelaide grassroots grant. So that was $94,000 between the four tier one golf courses. So we're sort of sharing the money across the golf courses. So I do that sort of thing, and then I also because Tim's kind of looking at sort of a bit of a job sharing type thing, so he can sort of spread his resources as far as possible. So I also help out with the OH&S or WHS stuff, so SOPs and inductions.
As in he's keen to have you guys multi-skilled.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's right, which is sort of a good way to do your team. So our veg people also do greenkeeping.
Yep.
So sometimes if we're down on staff, like during COVID and whatever, they'll do some rolling of the greens in the morning or do some bunkers just to help out the greenkeeping staff, and then get on with what they need
Obviously,
to do.
if you had a big event or a tournament, you can slide people across preparation
exactly.
and slide them back.
Yeah, because I think Tim saw it as there's no point having people who would specialise in just one area. Yeah. So you need to be able to have a flexible team.
Well, it protects you as well, right? Like if you're only capable of doing one job, and then that job becomes less of a focus for the club or for the committee or whoever.
Yes, that's right.
You're very expendable.
That's right. You've still got something to do.
So how'd you get involved? Like, was it always golf, or did you do something prior? Or
yeah, well, it's kind of a long story, but I started off as a temporary assistant secretary, a receptionist. Did a lot of temping in state government, so worked for like Deputy Premier Stephen Baker and worked for Department of Premier and Cabinet, and then started working for the National Environment Protection Council because I've always been Environment Protection Council.
Yep.
So I've always been interested in the environment, and they write legislation, sort of national standards for air quality or something like that. So I ended up working for them and worked with them for a number of years, 12 years in fact, doing sort of like paralegal type stuff, writing variations to legal
So you had
documents.
a lot of experience with the admin side of
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
Yep.
and then I got passed up for a few job promotions because I hadn't been to uni.
So you spat the dummy.
That's pretty much. Pretty much.
You're like, I'm out.
Because I'd been acting in the position for like 6 months, and there were two positions available, and I didn't get one because I hadn't been to uni, which I thought was quite unfair because I obviously could do the job.
Well, it's also a very short-sighted and old attitude, I think. I mean, we deal with some manufacturers who, up until very recently, wouldn't employ you in any position inside the company unless you had a university degree.
Yes.
Now, I think obviously that it helps show an employer that you've got the commitment to finish something that you start and whatever else.
Yeah.
But these people could have done a physiotherapy degree and they're moving into sprinkler sales.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
it doesn't.
if that's a thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I can see how that could be frustrating.
Yes.
And for obviously we have all of the senior leadership team from the Liberal and Labor government watch the podcast.
Yes.
So
Yeah. So anyway, shout out.
Yeah, you guys you need to be smarter about what you're doing.
That's right. So I was writing.
But no regrets. Like
no regrets,
they did you a favour almost.
Yeah, in a way, because then I thought, well, I've got to start studying now.
Yeah.
I've got to do something.
Yep.
So I decided to do garden design.
Yep.
Interested in plants and whatever.
Yep.
And then was volunteering for the local council. Started doing some work with them, and then started doing biodiversity work with them. And I also, at the same time, was working as a kitchen garden specialist at schools as part of the Stephanie Alexander Kitchen Garden program. So I did that for a number of years. And then decided schools weren't for me either. And one day I was out of a job and Tim Warren rang and said, I'm now the super at Glenelg Golf. Would you like to come and work here?
Were you known to him?
Yeah, sorry. So through my design work, I'd done some design at Adelaide Shores with him.
Yep.
And
he wasn't. It mustn't have been at Adelaide Shores for long.
I can't remember.
Because he was at Lynx and then Lynx Lady Bay and then moved up to the Big Smoke.
Yeah, so
Adelaide.
he was at Adelaide Shores. I want to say like maybe 18 months or something.
Yep.
And then he got the job
that.
at Lynx Lady Bay. So he moved
then he
there.
went that way and then he came back up to Grange,
and then he came to Glenelg. So he was commuting at one point from Lady Bay to Grange, which I don't know how the whole family did it, but
well, I think it's a case that if it's important, then you make it
that's
work.
right. And I think Tim had always wanted to work at Glenelg Golf, so when he finally got there, and having done design work with him at Adelaide Shores, he said I'd be the person to call.
Because you understood the design requirements of a golf course. You weren't just experienced.
Quite. No, it was more so I'm sort of an Indigenous plant specialist, so he needed someone on with that knowledge. Glenelg Golf hadn't had a vegetation person for 10 years, so there was a lot of work that needed to be done, and he needed someone who sort of had an idea of all that sort of stuff. So,
do you think it's under respected or under acknowledged, the vegetation in golf? Like, do you feel like it's all about lawn and turf and not about plants?
And I feel like the vegetation is what frames the course and makes the course look good. Yep. So if your vegetation looks crappy, no matter what golf course you are, then your golf course is going to look crap.
Which makes it, you can play the course, right? And it could be a good public course, but it's not going to be that tier 1 standard.
Yeah, exactly. And when it's full of weeds and whatever, and you go into the rough and plants unmaintained and you've got branches hitting you in the eye and that sort of thing, like you kind of want to set a high standard, particularly at a Group 1 course. So
I'm guessing that this kind of job wasn't even on your radar at all.
No, so this was when Tim said, would you like to come and work with me, I just thought, why? Why would I want to go and work at a golf course?
You didn't go with why not. You went straight with why. So pessimistic.
Well, I think he was on the, why not? You might like it. And funnily enough, I did. 5 years later, I think it's one of the greatest jobs I've ever had.
So that's what you've 5 years now?
Yeah, 5 years. So I came on not long after Tim started. Yep. So it's probably like maybe even 3 weeks.
Has he been there 5 years? Oh.
5 years he's been now. I know time goes, but we had COVID and life just disappeared.
Feels like, there's this pause of 2 years that it gets removed from any memory.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it was kind of a weird thing for me, and people that I know, Enviro people, were thinking, well, what's she up to? This is kind of a weird move for her.
Because golf courses wouldn't be traditionally the first place someone might go if they cared about biodiversity or environmental protection and management.
Yeah, and I think golf courses and maybe green spaces in general do have a bad reputation in terms of just being all about watering and spraying and not about any veg management.
Which is probably not an unreasonable opinion.
No, that's right. I was just saying to someone this earlier today that in Spain, some climate change activists attacked some golf courses recently to make a comment on the use of water, which you can kind of understand, I guess, during a drought. But I think golf courses and other green spaces need to prove that they do contribute to urban biodiversity, and there's a reason for them to be around. Yeah.
So this probably the question that it was at the forefront of my mind before we started was what is biodiversity? Because I think we get a lot of terms not thrown around, but there's a lot of terms that have been brought into conversation in the last 10 or 20 years that maybe weren't really considered and wasn't important. Obviously, biodiversity is a massive part of maybe councils and local government more than golf courses and schools.
That's true. That's true.
Give me your understanding of if someone says what's biodiversity, what does it mean?
So it refers to the variety of all living things. So from microbes and fungi to large trees and whales and everything. So it's like a web of life is probably the best way to describe it. So each part of the web needs the other part to function. So if part of the web starts breaking, so for instance, if you had a crash in the insect population, then other parts of the web wouldn't function as well. So I think you can kind of look at it as like that's just an airy-fairy who really cares situation. But if you think about the food that you eat, and 1 out of 3 mouthfuls of food has been pollinated by an insect pollinator, if we didn't have insects, it would be in big trouble, basically. And all of the food would be like potatoes and onions and you wouldn't have all your berries and vanilla. And
so the only population that wouldn't suffer would be the Irish.
Yeah, that's right. They just keep going with their potatoes.
So, and I guess biodiversity, there's obviously macro and micro. So for you guys, the golf course is its own biodiversity area or hub. Yep.
That's right. So we have often get accused, as I was saying before, of golf courses spraying a lot, and we were a host site for a coastal invertebrate study. So it's the first study that took place in Adelaide over 6 months and 5 different sites. And in the total of 6 months, they found 344 insect species at our course, which was the lower of the 5 sites, which did include Grange. So Grange did beat us. Yes.
I'm sure Tim will ask for that.
That's right. We demand a recount.
Yeah.
No. So the other sites were remnant sites and a June site. So 344 insect species, 75 of which were unique to our course. There were 9
unique to your course against the other test cases.
Yeah, that's right. Not found at the other courses. So Alex Stolarski from EntoSearch had a Green Adelaide grant to do the research, and he was really surprised. Like he was under the impression he'd find nothing.
Because of the amount of chemicals that
exactly. But that's the thing though, because the spraying is quite targeted. Like we're not spraying in random spots.
Or with a plane.
With a plane, exactly, because chemical is expensive. So it shows that we do stick to the fairways, that there are some rough areas that aren't sprayed and aren't treated where insects can survive. He did actually find a jewel bug at our course and Grange Golf Course that he didn't find anywhere else in the survey. He said potentially because of the amount of water. So having more water, and there were 9 damselflies and dragonflies found across the whole study. So remember we had that big influx of dragonflies and damselflies. So 7 of the 9 were found at our golf course because we've got, I think, 10 water courses. So,
So why does that matter, right? Like,
that's
can we just kill everything and then, I don't know, just chemical our way through it? Like,
I know. When, like I said, it is important to have insects. Because,
and that's not my opinion. I'm just
I'm just saying. Let's just clarify.
Throwing up some questions.
So when you think about, there are other animals that eat those insects. So we were also a host site for a microbat survey. So Harry Rust from University of Adelaide, he set up an anabat device, also funded by Green Adelaide, and found that 5 microbat species move through our course.
How big's a microbat?
A microbat is as big as your thumb.
Yep.
But I think a pregnant...
So it's a moth.
It is like a moth. They're very tiny. It's very hard to see. And one of them was called a little forest bat, which isn't seen on the Adelaide Plains very often, which shows that they're coming down to feed at our golf course. But a female microbat, if she's pregnant, can eat, I think it's about half her body weight in insects in a night. So that's a lot of insects. So even just for pure insect control, it's great to have them around.
Which is funny because if we just killed all the insects, you'd have no insect control problems, right?
Yeah, that's right. But then you'd have no microbats.
But then what do the microbats do?
That's right. Exactly.
What do they do for us?
Exactly.
Do you know what they do for us?
They're pollinators.
Okay. So now
they do some pollination, pollination of plant species.
So it's not just bees. Obviously,
it's not just
bees get all. They're like the poster child for keep them alive.
Yeah, and actually the European honeybee, the one that makes honey, the brown, light brown and dark brown. That's the one that everyone sort of thinks about when they think bees, but they don't actually think of native bees. So there are 1,500 native bee species in Australia.
It blows my mind. Like when you're saying 300, you found 300 different species. I figured we had 6 insects?
Yeah,
like a spider, a millipede, a mosquito, a moth, a butterfly. That's it.
Well, a lot of them are like, so you might have sort of 20 jewel bugs, but they're all slightly different, broken down into different species. So there were all sorts of things. I can't remember exactly, but bees, moths, flies.
And the people that come into the course, they can identify all of them. right? Close to, like when you have your insect.
Oh yeah, the
survey.
guy, yeah,
not
the
golfers.
I was gonna say not the golf. Yeah,
No, especially on the corporate golf days.
Alex was pretty amazing.
So he'll see if there's an insect that you've never seen before.
Yes, that's right.
Ever.
Yeah,
like if you had a unique insect that doesn't exist anywhere in the world, he would be like, "This is not. This is not from my book."
Exactly. Yep. Not from my brain.
Yep. Because his brain exceeds the
yeah.
book.
Yeah. He just, since he was a kid, he's just loved insects, and so he's very fascinated by them. And I wasn't really that interested in insects until I started. I guess I caught the bug from him. Just spending time with him, and his enthusiasm just
it's infectious.
It's infectious. Yeah.
So the advantage to the golf course of having a biodiversity manager in place is that the golf course obviously has you're protecting all of the native insects as well as birds and bats and bees and
everything
plant
else.
Life. And what it makes for a nicer environment, a more natural environment.
Yes, a more natural environment. So that it's kind of like it's a controlled natural environment in some ways. So we're creating a natural environment, but we have control over what happens in that environment, I guess, in some ways. Like if we need to move plants or whatever, I guess we
or
can do that.
Or if a feral animal was on site,
that's right.
you would manage that.
Exactly, like foxes.
Yep.
Naughty foxes.
Yeah, they get managed separately.
That's right.
To the bugs.
Yeah. I think the other thing as well is it shows that our club, and like Grange as well, because they've got Jess Abercrombie as their biodiversity manager, it shows that the club is serious about doing something. It's not just...
Yeah, so you get the benefit of that, the optics externally, as well as the genuine results.
That's right, And there is pressure on golf courses because people don't understand what goes on behind the gates. And we're trying as much as we can to get that message out. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, because that helps with just extending the message further.
Golf courses have a lot of them have a history of, like, no one can see behind the gates because they don't want them behind the gates.
Yes, partly, So when you look at Melbourne, where people were using the golf courses during COVID lockdown, people saw them. I was talking to a woman from Melbourne who said, well, I can't work out why I'd have a biodiversity manager because I was on the golf course during COVID and I just saw it was a complete waste of space.
For her.
Yeah. Because she just sees it as somewhere for people to play golf.
Yep.
But, when you've got trees, you've got birds visiting the site.
Bit of oxygen.
And
which comes in handy.
Yeah. And as the Resilient Adelaide project showed, where councils did some heat mapping during a heat wave week, they showed that the golf courses and other green spaces were the cooler parts during this heat wave.
Well, Greg talked about that at the same event you spoke at.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is a massive, I guess, ad for us for selling sprinklers, but
that's right.
It's not why we're here. And so, are you saying that there's a cost benefit to improving biodiversity or managing biodiversity better at the golf course, or it's not at that point yet? Like, can you use less chemicals, or
that's where we're going.
Different maintenance levels.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. So in some areas we have naturalised rough, so we've removed the turf and replaced it with just native plants and sand, which
I've probably seen them all.
Yeah, which
that's where I spend most of my time.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, you can see your bowl a bit easier.
Well, it's kind of sitting up there.
If it's not in a plant.
No.
But, I think we did have a lot of problems introducing that idea with our members because people often refer to that as sandy waste. So I think when people hear sandy and waste, they just think, well, that's going to be a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah.
Despite the fact they want to see their bowls, they also just don't want blank.
Yeah, it needs to be pretty, but it needs to be manageable from a golf. So it's still a golf course, right? That's right. That's its main purpose, to serve the members. Yeah.
So between our 14th and 18th, we've done our biggest naturalised rough as part of our course enhancement project. And in that, I've managed to put a few, lots of flowering plants, including some that are of conservation rating. So conservation rating is where it's sort of rare or endangered, or one of the plants is extinct on the Adelaide Plains. So that plant stock comes from outside of the plains area, so we're trying to reintroduce that. So that's kind of the thing that we're doing, that golf courses are like I was saying, like a managed area, so that we can plant the plants and actually look after them, because if they're in an open space, it's hard to have that control.
Yeah, it's almost like a lab, right?
Yeah,
like you can use it for experimentation.
Exactly.
Work out what the how it works, why it works.
Yes,
and then
exactly.
obviously off the back of that, it can then get
Yeah.
introduced.
Which is how we were sort of thinking of maybe getting local schools involved as like a living laboratory kind of thing. And then because we've got our aquifer storage recovery system, that's also another learning opportunity for kids.
Yeah, and if you look at it through the lens of a business, bringing in, you know, whether it's the primary school or early high school, you've got potential future members.
That's right.
Right? And
exactly.
and I know that's not probably why you do what you do.
Yeah.
But there's a commercial reality that if the club doesn't bring in enough money,
That's right.
and you have to start cutting. Obviously, you know how
that's
to roll
right.
greens as well, but
Yeah. No, I don't actually.
well, you should learn.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I need to.
Yeah. But then obviously that role can continue.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you know, it creates that cycle.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think it's great that you've got someone like Tim who has the foresight to go, this is important to the course, and actually it might be a, you know, 5-year return on investment from a course improvement, especially if your rankings start going up. And I think a lot of the times...
Which they have.
There you go. Tim will probably say that's because of the work he's done.
Well, it is. It is.
But a lot of the committee and the members care a lot about that. Like that's really important
exactly.
to them. You know, getting into the top 10 or the top 20 or the top 50 or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And would you say that obviously you talked about the framing, that's I guess probably a better question. Do you think the people that are judging the courses are looking at that more now than they might have 20 years ago? Like
I think they are.
The criteria has changed?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think with what we've been doing, it's really shown over the 5 years since Tim and I have been there, the course has changed a lot. Like there is a course enhancement project, but it has changed a lot in terms of the veg management and the density of the veg. I think in some areas it was too dense and people kept losing their bowls. So I guess if you know, designing for more playability.
Well, if you don't, they're going to walk through there.
Exactly.
And whatever veg density was there is going to cease to exist thanks to, you know, FootJoy footprints. So
yeah, which still happens. Like we have the, you know, no carts in here or don't walk through this area. We've got the ropes up and generally most people are pretty good, but some people just have
The challenge you've got is that Glenelg specifically, and a lot of those courses, but Glenelg is a very strong corporate golf day golf course. And you have a lot of non-members that are in most cases, or in high cases, they don't play golf.
Yes.
So they don't understand divot repair, which, you know, that would be the thing that would piss off the most people.
That's right.
But then they also don't understand ground under repair and do not enter this area.
That's right,
and
exactly.
This is out of play. And because they've never been taught.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And I think it's not their club.
No.
They don't really.
Why should they care?
Yeah.
Because they don't care about their local park.
Exactly.
Why should they care about,
And sometimes there's a lot of alcohol involved on those days.
I've only ever been to the dry golf days.
I've had to empty the bin after those days, and I tell you what, they're pretty full.
Well, you should try and empty the golf cart after. You have to take the whole golf cart out. So, if I was a golf course superintendent, I've probably got two separate questions. Firstly, if I was a golf course superintendent that had the budget to introduce a biodiversity manager, what would be my first 3 steps? What would I do? Where would I look? What would I do? How would I advertise? You know, what would I be looking at?
That is an interesting question because we've had that issue, you know, with veg officers, like trying to find people that understand the golf versus the plants situation. So
that's its own issue initially. Like the people might not exist.
Yes, I think that's also the thing. And then the people that are interested in that veg aren't interested in how that works at a golf course. So it's trying to get people to understand how they work together. So Kate Torgerson from Environmental Golf, she runs an environmental golf consultancy. So she goes to different golf courses and sort of does what I do basically as a consultant. And she and I are sort of trying to get more people interested in and trying to spread the word that it is a great place to work and there's lots of great things to do. And
is there a lot of opportunity, do you think? Like,
not really.
Like if you've got a job now, are you safe? Like obviously you are.
Yeah.
But if you came in as a school leaver and moved into that role, like are there going to be opportunities in the coming years? Do you think it's going to get more?
I think it will actually. Like I think because as many of you know, we're quite active on Instagram and in terms of promoting our brand and what we do. And lots of people are now starting to say, well, we want to do that too. Yeah. Like we want to be the next Glenelg.
Which then means you've got 20 or 30. Well, it's interesting because it'll be frustrating for people like Tim and Rob from a management of the golf club.
Yes.
Because you're now more desirable for other clubs.
Yes.
So they're like, well, if you work there, then you could work here.
Yes.
Which is probably not the lens they would look at it through, I don't think, knowing both of them.
Yeah.
That it would be more, they'd look at it and go, well, if the whole world gets better, then the whole world gets better.
And that's the way I'm also spreading the message in that it's, as when I talk about Glenelg Golf and everything that we do, it's not just us, it's trying to spread the message that the industry is doing good stuff. So we applied for a Banksia National Sustainability Award. We were the first golf course in 34 years to apply for that award, and we became finalists in the biodiversity category. And as part of the many documents that you have to write as part of the submission, I did say that this is not just for us. This is for the industry. And a whole turf management, not just golf, the whole turf management industry. Because we're seen I think Glenelg Golf is one of those clubs seen around Australia as a club that's doing lots of great things.
Progressive.
Progressive club. And Rob, as you mentioned before, Vince Kovic, he was at a manager's meeting, a manager's workshop, and someone said, can anyone tell us the golf club in Australia that's doing the most sustainability-wise? And the presenter said, what's Glenelg Golf Club, without a doubt.
Yep, that's got to feel good for him.
Yeah, Rob was very proud, you know, and we're lucky that, you know, he's there to support us and help spread the message as well. Yeah.
So you obviously mentioned you've got a contact who does biodiversity consulting.
Yes.
If I was at a country golf course with a very low budget, what would be some things that I could do to improve biodiversity at the course if I had no budget? So if it was really just a case of, you've always got volunteers on the country courses. What could they be doing differently or better or introducing that would be low cost, be it, I don't know, bird boxes and that kind of thing?
So you can start small and build up. Make use of your volunteers, make use of any local growers that are there.
Local growers of
native plants.
Yep.
So, I think one of the reasons Tim got me on board is that I have a lot of contacts. I know a lot of people in the industry being in garden design, so I was allowed to pull on those contacts and get people on board to help with all sorts of things. So if you're a country club, get in contact with your Natural Resources Management Board, the local growers, your volunteers, and you can always start small. Just plant some native plants in your clubhouse garden, make a bee hotel, put in some bird boxes. And it's one of these things that, you know, it's like the flu, that it just spreads. People just see what's going on. And I think, you know, people don't necessarily think about insects in the clubhouse garden, but when they see butterflies, I think that's when they think about biodiversity. And, you know, everyone loves to see a butterfly flying around. Butterflies are very important for the ecosystem. I've only discovered this like a year or so ago, that they're great for birds. Birds catch them to eat.
The whole butterfly?
The whole butterfly, which is kind of not great. We're doing a butterfly rewilding project. So,
but aren't you trying to... It's about biodiversity, right?
And that's part of the web. They're part of the...
The bird's got to eat the butterfly.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, as pretty as they are actually an important food source for birds.
Who eats the birds? The cats.
Foxes.
Yeah. So in your area, in the Glenelg's biodiversity, the birds are at the top of the food chain without introduced species?
Yes, they would be. So we have, for 32 years, done quarterly bird surveys. So we have great data on what's been at the course. So we have over 94 bird species that are regularly seen at the course, ranging from small birds like thornbills to, and also the superb fairy wrens, believe it or not, have recently come back to our course.
Believe it or not, like I know what that is.
The blue wrens. The blue wrens.
The boys are blue, aren't they?
Yes, that's the one.
And the girls are ugly.
Yeah, it's true. And so are the juveniles.
The
juvenile males.
Just the older men.
Yeah. They're the ones that like to pretty themselves up.
I resonate with that.
As I hear about the older men. So, so we got some small bird species, thornbills, willy wagtails and all that, ranging to your larger birds like magpies and whatever. We also have predatory birds like the black-shouldered kite. So they'd feed mainly on rodents, but they might get smaller birds. We have collared sparrowhawks as well, so they might get some of those smaller birds, hopefully like the horrible noisy miners that everybody hates. We also see pelicans, royal spoonbills and...
Seagulls?
Seagulls, we do. We got a dump nearby. Sometimes we have heaps of seagulls and bin chickens or the
sacred ibis.
Yeah, the ibis.
That's right. I did some biodiversity back in the day.
That's right.
Funnily enough, I'm not kidding.
Yeah. So it's quite amazing to see that range of species, and you sort of think about where else would they go. So I don't know whether you've heard about the maybe not the redneck stint. It's a very probably wouldn't
Like Jeff Foxworthy.
That's
like
right.
Episode, right?
Probably only about this big. It's a tiny little bird that migrates to Siberia every year. Like why?
From
I
where?
don't know. From Adelaide, from
To
the Coorong
Siberia?
to Siberia. It's like a 30,000 kilometre return journey.
Wouldn't you get there and then have to come straight back?
Seriously, and you'd be super tired. What am I doing with my life?
Well, that's why you eat a third of your body weight in insects,
That's right. I'm regretting my life choices right now. So
And that's just instinctive. That's the crazy thing. And
it's
from what we
amazing.
understand about the brain, right?
Yeah.
That bird's just
It's
going there because
instinctive.
it's like, I have to go now.
Yeah, and I've seen them on our course. Actually, I was alerted to them by someone, a previous, it was in a previous life, a duck shooter, one of our members. So he can spot birds from a mile away. He's very good, and spot flying birds as well, which is obvious, but I hadn't thought about it.
Because they look different.
And he said, you need to go down along the first, there's a redneck stint. And I was like, I call BS.
Because you're like, you only know ducks, bro. You don't know redneck stints.
And I go down there and there it is. So probably just resting on its journey, coming back from Siberia.
And I'm guessing that there's a low percentage of people that would be on the golf course that would mean anything to.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Is that, like, you win awards, you get acknowledgements, you go to do your public speaking.
Yeah.
Does that matter more than like seeing that, like when you get this random, you're like, this is working. Like, is that what it's the real
to
real
me that
reward?
is because that shows that we do have an important space in the urban environment. We are actually providing shelter for these birds. And
do we really fully understand the benefit of biodiversity?
I don't think people do.
Like, as in,
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like, because
I
even
don't
for
think-
me, like, I'm a bit like spray the chemicals, kill the bugs, right?
Yeah.
But what is that doing? What's the impact of that over 500 years?
Yeah.
Right? Or
Exactly. And that's why we're losing other species.
Yeah.
Like, so I mentioned before the butterfly rewilding project. So that's a Green Adelaide project that's been going on for 20 years.
Green Adelaide must have some serious government funding,
Well, I think they also...
or a lot of volunteers.
Well, a lot of passionate people that are just really interested in trying lots of things. So Tony Flaherty from Green Adelaide has been heading this up. And so the yellowish sedge skipper was last seen at the end of the Adelaide Airport runway in 1985. I know. And
where does that get recorded?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I was like, how did someone know that was the last one?
There's no internet.
That's right.
It's in a book somewhere.
And that's just from indiscriminate spraying, possibly, and lack of habitat. So indiscriminate spraying and those bug zappers and whatever, like you can't, or those sticky yellow.
Yeah. Well, you're
traps
going to
as
get what you're going to get,
You're
right?
gonna get, you're gonna all sorts of things stuck in those. So, because I'm vegetarian, I'm just sort of anti-spraying and anti-killing things. But there's a lot of work being done now to reintroduce the yellowish sedge skipper habitat around Adelaide, and the golf courses, Royal Adelaide and our courses involved in the habitat. But Royal Adelaide have been doing some introductions, so I've been working with Green Adelaide to introduce this butterfly at Royal Adelaide, and there is actually evidence it's starting to breed, which is really exciting. And they've had a few failures at other sites, so golf courses could be the answer because we can manage the environment.
Well, it makes it look like it's very well protected, right? Like,
yes.
Royal's probably the most dangerous golf course, but it's only if you cross the track at the
railway line.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as Matt Endicott, who's our coastal representative for Green Adelaide, he came with me to Royal Adelaide one day and he said, we can do a release here. He said, we just need to snip down this Garnia and burn it. So they think that the skipper has a relationship with the carbon and also likes that fresh foliage on which to lay its eggs. Yeah. So he's like, we need to snip this down and burn it. Do you reckon they can do it by the end of the week? I'm like, it's a golf course. We could do it tomorrow. Yeah. We'll just contact Nathan and
Nathan will be like, what, we get to have a fire?
yeah, pretty
sweet.
much. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You reckon it's going to take us a long time to make a fire? No.
But you are right, though, because the reality is, especially a course like Royal, who's probably got 18 or 20 active green staff or external staff, like, we can throw one on that. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. But Matt was saying in some of the areas he has to work with councils. He needs to get approvals from someone and then get it into the job sheet and do this and do that.
The council is not owned by any one individual. And I know golf courses aren't either, and some are.
Yeah.
But it's committee driven, and
Yeah.
someone like Nathan or Tim are given
that's right.
That's their role to manage.
Exactly.
Whereas you imagine in a local park, you cut down something and set fire to it.
I know.
The police are called. It's like,
well, I did actually speak to someone at council who does one of the councils who does want to actually start experimenting with burning, particularly burning of the poas, because some of those native grasses.
You think that might be the solution for poa, burning it?
Oh,
I mean, it doesn't.
yes.
It seems to be chemical resistant to the point of like just give up.
Oh, well, if you want fresh foliage, just burn it. We've done that at Glenelg, and in almost a week it comes back.
So we don't burn poa.
Yeah, if you want to get rid of it, don't burn it because
Okay.
it loves a burn.
Ah.
Yeah, a lot of the native plants in Australia love a burn.
Yeah, which
because
is that.
that's their
So
natural-
bushfires are kind of just a natural part of.
Yeah. Like you look at some seeds that you want to raise stuff from seeds, you need to soak them overnight or expose them to smoke or something in order for them to germinate.
This is kind of where I was going with, like, there's got to be stuff we don't understand about biodiversity.
Oh, yeah,
And is it a case that for people like you that are involved in it, you just know that in your heart and mind that what you're doing is the right thing to do, right?
Well, I'm
you
hoping
believe
it is.
so,
Yeah.
right?
I'm hoping it is, yeah. Well, I just,
And what the result of that will be could be anything from what we understand to what we don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't know where it's going to go. Like a guy called Henry Lawson, who used to work at Royal Adelaide, was working with us part-time. Because I'm part-time and he was part-time. And he was saying to me, there are some areas in this golf course that you could just leave and just see what comes up. Yeah. Which we did. Yeah. And stuff just comes up. Yeah. So the seeds are around there somewhere. Yeah. They just need to be given the space to grow. Yeah. When you're continually poisoning or leave this grass But if you leave some areas, stuff will come up. So, and Kate was saying there are some areas you can just burn it and then just see what comes up.
Can you burn stuff like without permission? Like, do you have to let the...
Yes, we can.
Yeah, you wouldn't, but yeah.
Well,
hypothetically, people might.
Yeah, well, because
this podcast will be watched by
I was just about to say
213 people. You want to make sure. One of them's the chief firefighter of
Yeah, I'm not advocating everyone go out and burn stuff. No. So because we're on private land, as you mentioned before, we've spoken to the council and they said,
provided you're not doing it in the middle of summer and
we notify our local residents. We do notify the airport.
Yeah.
Which
you got planes nearby.
Close. Yeah. Well, they did tell me that they didn't want to be notified, and then the next day they called me and they went, actually, I think we've had a think about it. It's probably helpful to know. And I'm like, yes. Yeah. And then we also notify the MFS in the morning that we're doing that.
Just to have the engines fully fueled up.
Well, we did just so they know not to. They can sit back and relax.
You're like, how we were going to do 60 square metres? Yeah, we just lost 2 holes. Please come here now.
Yeah. Well, we always have water on. We always safety first.
Well, you guys have got a very high quality irrigation system, so it's fine. Just turn the irrigation system on.
We did have an incident once where we had notified the MFS, and then some coppers did turn up to the course because they were having a coffee on Tapley's Hill Road and smelled a bit of smoke. Yeah. What's going on there? Yeah. It was one of those mornings where the smoke just didn't leave. It was kind of just hanging in the air a bit. So.
We get that at my house. I reckon there's a gentleman that owns a decent sized block. It's like 3,000 square metres, and he's of the generation where rather than throw it out, you just burn it. Yeah. And so I think he's got an incinerator out the back, and I got home yesterday and I smelt I gave my daughter a hug and I was like, she stinks like smoke. And Celeste's like, they've been burning over the fence. Like, of course he has.
Not like us when we were kids, we used to just chuck stuff in the incinerator. But that doesn't happen anymore. But a friend of mine was saying he came down Ocean Boulevard one afternoon because we did a burn on an afternoon. It was quite a big burn of some sedges. And he said he came down Ocean Boulevard and he could see all this smoke and he thought, Glenelg Golf Club must be burning again.
Meanwhile, some poor guy's just dying in a house fire. So you talked about that you did design.
Yes.
Or landscape design.
Yeah.
Do you see, like, is that probably the main pathway to get into the biodiversity side of things, or is that like a rare pathway?
I think that's quite a rare pathway in a way, because I also was working sort of doing biodiversity stuff with the City of Holdfast Bay. So I worked in their environmental section doing like setting up biodiversity projects like a bird box strategy and a green living program for the residents and seed funding for green projects and whatever. So that was kind of how I sort of fell into the biodiversity stuff and volunteering with them at the sand dunes and stuff. So yeah, it is an interesting it is interesting to think about the pathway that you would take to get, because mine's kind of accidental.
I don't think that's uncommon for a lot of people though.
Yeah, exactly.
Even
who don't have university degrees.
Well, I don't have a university degree, and to be honest, I mean, even in the business, we've got 37 staff now, and I reckon there's maybe 3 university degrees, and obviously we're not. It's not a hospital, right? So there's less likelihood that there's going to be university degrees. But like even you wouldn't. I don't know what your plans were, but like you go do media, or what was yours?
Screen production.
Yeah, like
screen production. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
so then you do that. What was the plan? Like you're going to be work on movie sets or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of cases, there's so many people I know that the degree that they've done is not what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And
because you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like, and even now, I still don't really know what I want to do.
Well, when you grow up.
Yeah. I'm not planning on growing up. I think that's when you get sick and die. I'm just going to continue to be a child.
Someone did tell me once that no one's career is a straight line.
Well, it can't be.
And it can't be. And then I think you just, it's hard to know when you're young and you go to university or studying. It's hard to know what you're going to be really
we don't
interested
get
in.
exposure to it.
Exactly.
Like, you think about, work experience. My work experience was, what do you want to do for work experience? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to do anything. Well, what's going to be the easiest thing to do for 2 weeks when you don't have to do anything? Yeah. And you ring family friends and go, hey, can you take them?
Exactly.
And they're like, what do they do? And they're like, so I think I worked at the Hilton Hotel for one of them.
Yeah.
And that was actually good. They managed it really well. You got to do 4 different days. But one of the days was housekeeping.
Yeah. Look, I'm definitely not
I can tell you right now, this is not my desired path.
Well, you don't know until you try.
Well, that's right. And it was good to confirm that I didn't want to rip bed sheets off of hotel room
and
beds.
a lot of them I hear. I heard
I can
a
imagine.
lot in a day.
None of them are just had a quiet night. It's a hotel.
Exactly.
But I worked in the pastry kitchen for one of the days.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could do this. There's just broken cookies that I didn't quite make it everywhere, and it's like, just eat whatever you want whenever you want. And I'm thinking that will probably get old at some point.
Yeah, apparently
I was only there for 2 days, so I was like, I can just keep eating the cookies.
Yeah, someone was telling me, they used to work at Arnott's, and they said you can eat whatever you want off the production line.
Yeah.
In the first week you go nuts, and then you never eat
yeah.
any.
We've got Chubba Chubs here, and we give them out with deliveries.
Yes, we get them at work.
Yeah, and I can't remember the last time I ate one. It's just because they're there. You're like, right. Oh God, no.
Yeah. So I think with us, maybe just to go back to your question about how do you get into where I ended up, I think Harry, who's our ecosystems and conservation, I'm not sure. I can't even remember what the degree, what this TAFE qualification is now. Yeah, a conservation and ecosystems. I think it is. It would be the way to start, because I guess that gives you your grounding.
Probably gives you a good network as well. Like if you think you've spent however long to finish your TAFE, you're with a lecturer who might give you a pathway to employment that's more in line with your personality, because they'll be like, you know what, you won't fit in here, but you will fit in here, and you care more about, I don't know, coastal indigenous biodiversity more than hills or plains, right? So go there.
Yeah, because they're quite specialised areas.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I mean I don't know that, but you kind of it makes especially now that I'm hearing you say 1,500 birds and 400 of these and that there's this one's there, but it's not there.
Yeah, exactly.
There's all these microclimates and you kind of micro.
Yeah.
Biodiversity ecosystems.
Yeah.
In the landscape design space, and obviously this podcast is probably listened to by landscapers.
Yeah.
Landscape designers more than any other kind of area.
Yeah.
What would you be putting into a backyard if you got free reign to design a backyard? And obviously
that's why I don't do a lot anymore,
because you don't get free reign. Yeah. But if you could squeeze something in, or if there was a signature where you're just like, well, and there are some designers that will have a signature move. There might be a chair or a whatever. Like, what would you be almost forcing into a backyard if you could only get one thing in, and if you could have everything? What's the idea? Like, is it indigenous plants as a priority, or at least South Australian plants as a priority?
Yeah, that is for me. But I'd also, because I'm from kitchen gardening background, I think having space for people to grow some vegetables, some herbs or whatever, just to save money at the shops and save on plastics. And it's also reduced food miles. Growing your own food also means it's high nutritional value. It's better taste. So, and it's great when you've got young kids to grow your own food.
Better taste. I don't think that's true for tomatoes.
Yeah. What?
I can't see it.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
You're growing the wrong tomatoes,
I think my wife might be shit at growing tomatoes.
Well, you're getting Bunnings ones?
No, I don't know where she gets them from. I reckon her dad takes seeds from old tomatoes and dries them out and like... But yeah, I just don't...
Yeah, no. I think you need to get onto Diggers or some heritage seeds and grow some
You're
good
like a
stuff.
sponsored athlete.
Yeah,
Just like,
that's right.
Diggers, thanks. Proudly brought to you by Diggers.
That's right.
I think we grow chilies and they're good. And you get so many.
Yes.
And mint and basil, we always have that growing. But I remember she's growing... Oh, cucumbers. Cucumbers are always different though.
Yeah, it depends. And that's different varieties.
But that's the thing, right? Like the ones that are at the shops aren't the ones that would maybe naturally existing.
And I think they just do sort of the basic continental and the Lebanese cucumbers. But you can get all sorts, like Armenian. I grew Armenian cucumbers once, which had stripes on them, white and green stripes. Really interesting and really tasty. So it does depend on the variety. So having spoke about Diggers, there are other companies like the Lost Seed. The Lost Seed that do...
I don't want to pigeonhole my sponsorship opportunities here.
The Lost Seed also do rare varieties, and they have some tomatoes that I think like $1.50, $2 a seed.
Yeah. Jeez.
But the tomatoes are unbelievable.
Yeah.
So some of those like Yugoslavian or the sort of Italian varieties, those really big sort of beefsteak type ones, they're amazing.
Yeah, we can actually slice off a piece and it's a whole sandwich.
Yes,
it's just one slice. Yeah.
It fits the whole piece of bread. Yeah, and then you have to put it back in the fridge for the next sandwich.
Sure you keep it. So native plants.
Yeah,
ideally.
Yeah, definitely. Ideally, so grasses
from
and a mix.
Environment, like from a water sustainability standpoint as well as a biodiversity standpoint.
Definitely, because we're not selling irrigation here, are we? So
we sell enough.
Yeah.
So we sell enough to the assholes that don't care about biodiversity. Don't worry about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So looking at creating layers in the garden. So you're looking for your ground covers, your low plants, your shrubs, and then your trees. Yeah. So trying to create that different levels of plantings. So not just because it's more interesting, but it's also better for birds and particularly smaller birds. So you look at the noisy miner that's just taking over the suburb. People have told me it's not native. I've got news for you. It actually is a native bird, but it's growing sort of out of control because it likes tall trees and lots of lawn or clear spaces. So people don't grow shrubs a lot. Yep. So that shrub layer is really important for those smaller birds. And noisy miners just chase them out all the time. Because
that shrub layer is replicating if there was a natural environment.
That's right. Yep. And somewhere for them to hide from the noisy miners. So apparently noisy miners don't like shrubby areas under trees. Yep. They prefer clear lines of sight.
So you could naturally manage a noisy miner overpopulation in your area, in your own home, by the way you plant.
Potentially, yeah. And by
no guarantees.
No guarantees.
Don't write in.
Don't write in and say it didn't work. Yep. It's just potentially. And it's also the shrubs that you choose. So when you look at some of those grevilleas that have the really big blousy flowers, like Robin Gordon is one of the varieties, the noisy miners love those because they've got a lot of nectar and they will protect that site to keep that nectar source for themselves or for their family. So if you're choosing plants with smaller flowers, then those smaller flowers are better for the smaller birds.
No shit. So the size of the flower has a direct correlation.
Yeah. And it's also because I guess the smaller birds don't need as much nectar as a slightly larger bird as a noisy miner, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah.
Well, makes sense. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you have to understand.
Yeah.
And bee hotels.
Yes.
Talk to me about a bee hotel.
Bee hotels.
So if someone wanted to do that, you could just Google, how do I make a bee hotel?
Yeah, yep. It's basically like a block, like more than 10 centimetres deep, and you drill different sized holes into it.
I saw one.
Yeah.
At the museum.
Oh, yes, right.
In that room where they've got all the animals and turtles, and there's it's in the museum. Sorry.
Yeah, can't.
This is a familiar room for anyone with 0 to 12-year-olds, I guess.
Yeah.
But they've got a beehive in the museum inside the building with a plastic ramp outside the building, and then there's a block on the windowsill just with holes in it.
Oh, right, yes.
A concrete, a Besser block.
Yeah, you can do it with that too, or you can even use paper straws. So paper straws are important, not plastic, because plastic sweats. Not that we have plastic straws.
Plastic works heaps better. Yeah. I've got heaps of plastic straws. I bought up.
Yeah, did you? trying to corner the market when they got banned.
You think $1.50 for a tomato seed's expensive? You want to buy a plastic straw from me?
Yeah, so paper straws.
Yeah.
In a can even, or I do workshops with kids. We put the paper straws in, and also bamboo.
How does this? So a bee hotel's not a beehive.
No. So Beehives are for European honeybees that live as a collective, basically.
The trendy bees, the ones
trendy
that we
bees,
all
the
know.
ones that everyone cares about because you won't have any more honey. Where some people here, like Katja Hogendorn, who is at University of South Australia, she's a preeminent bee researcher here. She's basically said if you have European honeybees, you're very selfish because you're not thinking of the native bees, which is kind of true.
Because if you have one, you can't have the other?
No, it's just because, so native bees don't live in a hive, they're solitary.
So there's no queen?
No queen, they don't make honey.
What do they do?
They go around and buzz.
And we're selfish.
No, they go around they go around and pollinate your tomatoes.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's for tomatoes don't taste good because you don't have any.
Because I've got shit bees.
You don't have the bees.
All
So
right.
Katja did some...
Need better bees.
Need better bees. Katja did some research with her team because a greenhouse in Adelaide wanted to introduce bumblebees, which bumblebees are obviously a feral bee. They're not a native bee. And she found that blue-banded bees... So it's they have like a dark blue stripe and a light blue stripe, or white, almost white. They buzz pollinate. So if this is the flower, the tomato flower, they love tomatoes, chilies, eggplants, anything from that family. Yeah, this is why your tomatoes taste crap. So they will come up and they will...
Bad pollen.
Yeah, they will click onto that flower basically and headbang it. So if you Google...
shake the pollen.
Yeah, if you Google headbanging bee...
Yeah.
You can see footage slowed down to heavy metal music, actually. So if you don't like heavy metal
I was
music,
about to say
turn
Bad
it
Pollen
down.
sounds like a band name, so there you go.
That's right. And they buzz pollinate. So tomatoes are self-pollinating, but when they have a pollinator, they produce better seeds and better tasting fruit. So when you look at the greenhouses, they either use a handheld vibrating machine, like an electric toothbrush, or they have try to bring in bees, I guess, to
Is
do
a
that pollination.
handheld vibrating pollinating machine something that would make those vegetables not considered organic anymore?
I don't think so.
No,
I don't know.
like
I don't
fine
know.
line.
Interesting.
Sounds a
Fine
bit
line,
GM to me.
So it's just moving the pollen. So if you have tomatoes that aren't seeding, if you flick them, that will help move the pollen around. But if you had blue-banded bees in the garden, they'd do that pollination for you. They don't use the bee hotels, by the way. They burrow into the ground.
Really?
They're a ground burrowing bee.
A ground burrow?
Yeah.
Oh, this is freaky. Imagine one of them. Imagine they take over. We're in trouble.
So the male bees roost on vegetation at night time. They cling on with their teeth. They sleep with their teeth. I should send you some photos, actually.
They
Because
bite.
people are probably trying to work out what the hell I'm talking about.
They can Google it. That's right. They're very educated audience.
They cling on to the plant. So this is the blue
With their
banded
teeth.
with their teeth.
And sleep.
Yeah.
Literally
yeah,
just...
Yeah.
They
have
close
very
their
small
eyes?
mouths. Yeah. I don't think so. I've got a photo. It doesn't look like it.
Asking the hard-hitting questions today.
Hard-hitting questions. But anyway, going back to the bee hotels. So they are used by solitary bees like resin bees or...
Did you say bi-solitary?
Used by solitary bees
Oh,
to
sorry,
lay...
used by
to
solitary. I thought you meant like there's two of them.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Used by solitary bees to lay their eggs.
Yep.
So the female will get some pollen and roll it in a bowl, put it inside the bee hotel and then lay an egg on top and close the chamber.
One egg.
So there used to be one egg, but researchers have found that it can be multiple chambers within. So if you've got it there, you can have multiple chambers within that. So I don't know how the one at the back gets out.
Kills the other one. Strongest survives.
So what she does is she seals the nest. So the resin bee will go to a eucalypt or something and chew up the sap and then come back and seal the nest. So if you have a bee hotel, you look to see if any of the holes are sealed and that will tell you if there's something in there. So there's also leaf cutter bees that do like punch holes and on the edge. So it's almost like a perfect hole, but it's on the edge of a leaf. Yep. So don't start spraying. Yep. And that is to seal a hole.
And you might not know the answer to this, but do all bees sting?
I think some native bees don't, but there are some that do.
And if they sting, they die. That's pretty standard.
I don't think with the native bees because I don't think so.
So they just keep stinging
I
them.
think you can get stung multiple times with a native bee, but it doesn't happen a lot because they're not as aggressive as the European honeybee. So the European honeybee is defending a nest.
Is there an argument for us to kill all the European honeybees?
Some people would say so.
Like your friend,
but then we
friend
wouldn't
at uni?
we wouldn't have any honey.
Do we need
But,
honey?
Yes, because it's yummy.
Yeah, okay. Especially if you're a vegetarian. You've already got very limited options.
What else you got? Oh, okay.
I got honey.
Yeah,
we should actually crack the cake out.
Yeah. So
I think you're the first guest we've had that's brought food.
Well, as my partner often says, it's quite self-interested.
Because you want the cake.
said he's not being generous.
Well, if you want to cut it up, we'll keep talking.
Yeah, but I'll. So anyway, the European honeybees can keep the temperature of their hive.
I'm trying to get some plates. Oh, maybe and some spoons if we want to get fancy.
Yeah. European honeybees can keep the temperature of their hive to a certain level.
What, within a degree kind of thing? Or like they know what it is?
Yeah, I think it's around 35 or something. They keep it around the same sort of temperature. But solitary bees have to wait for their bodies to warm up from the sun.
So they're almost like a lizard. So they're cold-blooded?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, insects, yeah.
Or they are all insects?
Yeah.
They're not mammals, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good one, Clint. See, I was listening.
Sorry.
I was listening at school.
So the European honeybee, when it wakes up in the morning, as soon as it wakes up, can fly off because it's at the right body temperature.
Thanks to
the
regulating
control, temperature control in the hive.
Yep.
And the native bees have to wait for their bodies to warm up. So there's that gap of time where European honeybees are foraging for food, but the native bees are still...
So they get a head start.
Yeah.
So it's really the early European honeybee catches the pollen.
The food, that's right. So that puts the bees at a disadvantage.
You're not in on this, mate.
Yeah. Oh, it's not a big cake, but we'll probably have to share it around, I think. But, yeah.
I didn't know that about bees. That there's so many bees.
I think this is a thing that we don't really know a lot about our native bees and animals.
So I've got kids, right?
Yeah.
And my daughter, my oldest has been stung by bees heaps.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's the worst.
They are scared of bees for that reason.
Yeah, of course.
So is it a case that, I don't know how much is reasonable to eat of this? A quarter?
No, I couldn't do a quarter.
Right.
I'd do a...
Come on, it's not a dope cookie. You'll be fine. So, they would be like, we don't want bees in our backyard.
Yes.
So your argument would be, you just don't necessarily need to have European...
Yeah, that's right.
Angry bees in your backyard.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not that you're sure that you can control what visits,
Yeah,
but...
you can. You spray them.
It's a spray guy.
So
are you sponsored by a chemicals company?
I own a chemical company, actually. And this episode is brought to you by Lawn Hub. No, I'm curious by that, actually. So you guys obviously buy a lot of chemicals as a golf course, and so does the whole industry. Mm-hmm. Are there any of those companies, and you don't have to name them, that are kind of getting involved and going, we, as bad as it sounds, acknowledge that we're pretty much killing everything. So we want to try and kind of get our ESG score up by sponsoring a little bit more biodiversity. And are there any of them actively doing anything like that? You know what I mean? Like you think like chemical company X goes, look, we're going to donate $50,000 to this whatever. You're not seeing any of that?
Yeah. I'm not sure I could really speak to that.
Because it seems like there should that might be next. Like if they're concerned about their brand, I guess. Yeah. Well,
I do some work with Syngenta. I'm not paid by Syngenta, but I did a roadshow with them recently.
At Waterpro?
Yeah, Morpheville, and then I also spoke in Perth. So they've got a project called Operation Pollinator where they're trying to encourage golf courses, and this is Syngenta internationally are doing this, encourage golf courses to have pollinator plots. So they've recently, Kate Torgerson has been working with clubs around Australia to introduce those pollinator plots.
Well, that's the answer. So they are doing
They are doing stuff. And they did, on the roadshow that we did, they did have some of their presenters talking about how, there are emerging technologies to be able to assess issues sooner, and they were encouraging people to assess their issues as soon as they could and treat them as soon as they could, because then they use less chemical and they get a better effect from what they're using.
Have you guys noticed a chemical cost or requirement reduction since you've been concentrating on biodiversity at the course? Or is it just the areas have changed? Yeah,
the areas have changed. Although Tim did say there are some areas of our naturalised rough that we have still had to put chemical in to maintain in terms of like pre-emergence stuff, just to stop weeds coming through. So some of those naturalised rough areas that are in dry areas that don't get any irrigation and don't get any water source, they don't need as much management as those ones where there's a higher water table. When you've got a higher water table, we obviously have more weed issues.
Yeah, because everything's...
Everything just stays wet all the time. So the flowers flower all the time, all year round, but then you get more weed issues. He says with a mouthful of cake.
We should not eat during podcasts. It's a silly idea. Glenelg obviously has a wedding market.
Yes.
As a big part of the business.
Yeah.
Have you had any feedback, or have you got new areas that are kind of been desirable for photography for the bride and groom because of the biodiversity?
We haven't got there yet, but we're sort of hoping to have sort of more sort of flowering areas near the wedding lawn, more flowering plants and stuff to kind of make it more like, nice place in spring and But I think they do a lot of those kind of, shots with grasses and
100%.
stuff. Yeah.
A friend of ours is a wedding photographer,
Yeah.
and she's got a spot that she takes everyone to, and there's just lots of long.
Yeah, long
it's almost
grass.
like wheat.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes weedy.
Yeah. And the black and whites just look nuts. But even just to get that kind of, especially for the kids that are a bit closer to the height, to have like a little bit of grass across there.
Yeah. And then there's also playing with the light as well through the grass heads. So, so we're kind of getting there. That's sort of on our list. But Tim and I have a very, very long list of stuff that we want to do. So
what is that like? So have you got some goals, like some long-term and mid-term and short-term goals of what you want to achieve at the course?
One of the things we were looking at was introducing native fish to the course. Yep. So we recently worked with the Nature Glenelg Trust to assess our waterways to see if we could introduce fish, and they actually did find one native fish species in 2 of our ponds, which was pretty funny.
How are they getting in there?
Well, one of them we pump from the ASR, from Aquifer Storage Recovery, so that pumps from Brown Hill Creek, so we probably got it from Brown Hill Creek. And
then it has to survive, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So that shows good signs.
Yeah, well, and someone told me today, he reckons in another section of one of those ASR ponds there might be some golden perch, because he did some carp removal at one point. Kieran from Mount Osmond Golf Club was telling me today that he did some work at Glenelg many years ago netting out carp. So
are you testing the quality of the water at all?
Yeah, so that's what Nature Glenelg Trust did, but we don't do it regularly. But they did it. I think Tim does it as part of the ASR when we pump up and use the water. Yep. I think there is some assessment that goes on there, so we know whether it's too salty or whatever. But
we used to when I was at primary school, I went to primary school at Artornish Primary School, which is in St Agnes, and they were partnered with Tea Tree Valley Council. They built a contributory scheme across the road in a wetland, so they had the wetland and did a mass plantings, and we were testing the salinity, the turbidity, and the alkalinity of the water regularly, and then reporting that back to council. And I think it was obviously similar to the kitchen garden to try and educate students around what was happening, and that's why I knew what a sacred ibis was, because back then they were introducing sacred ibis, or they were like this beautiful bird.
Yeah, right.
And then now they've kind of gone rogue, and then just like they have their own name.
Taken up life at the dumps.
Well, they've got their own nickname. Like there was no such thing as a bin chicken in 1993 in St Agnes, but my kids will go, "Hey, there's bin chickens." Yeah,
that's right. They're everywhere now. Everywhere. So, but I've heard that's potentially a habitat thing as well with some of those.
As in they don't have one.
Yeah. You know how we've got the grey-headed flying fox here now? Oh, you don't go to WOMAD?
Do I look like a WOMAD?
Well, you spend time at Botanic Park in
I
the
go.
city.
I go. Are you talking about the things that hang upside
flying
down?
Fox, yes.
When you go to the zoo, and all you can do is hear.
That is the one.
Yep,
very noisy. Yeah, they've apparently moved down to Adelaide in the last, I think it's 10 years because of habitat loss.
Yeah. So rather than just dying, they relocate.
They're trying to relocate, but I think this is the thing.
Because that's instinctive, right?
Yeah, but I think the problem is relocating here is not great because it's too hot for them.
Yeah.
So I have friends who work at the Botanic Garden, and they had to hose them down because they're just too hot.
That's interesting.
But I think they're putting sprinklers on them now.
Because we want them to stay alive.
Well, it's not a very nice job to clean up the bodies, I hear.
You only have to do it once.
But then they breed and more come.
So what the theory would be that sacred ibis don't have enough natural... Because kind of that seems contradictory to me. Because you're like, well, wouldn't they... Like, they seem to be fine.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think
living in bins is whatever. They've adapted. That's evolution.
Exactly. I think many animals do.
Yeah.
There's a book that I read about that some animals have actually adapted to humans being around.
Which is like forced evolution.
Yeah. Like seagulls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Dumps chips at the beach.
Yeah. And that's just like, this is good. This is the new norm.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, but
we don't have to hunt for fish. We can just eat chips.
Yeah, but I did reading this book that when you're feeding up seagulls here and creating a bigger seagull population, you're causing problems elsewhere, because when Lake Eyre floods, and I don't know how this happens, but the seagulls know it's flooding, and there's a bird that will start breeding there.
Did you say air floods?
Lake Eyre.
Oh, Lake Eyre. I'm like, what?
When Lake Eyre floods,
Yeah.
there's a bird that triggers a breeding cycle there, and then the seagulls go up there. The seagulls that we feed at the beach,
They know.
They know, and they go up there and they
Eat their young.
Yeah, they do.
Part of biodiversity.
Yeah, that is
You
biodiversity,
can't pick
isn't
and
it?
choose what
I
parts
know,
you're happy with,
that's
right?
true. It's the web of life.
Wow. So obviously we've covered off, youngsters looking to move into the role, even people that are looking for a career change.
Yeah.
They can go to TAFE and do that.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of volunteering opportunities
Yes.
in so many different areas.
Yes, exactly. Local councils are always looking for people to help out at the dunes and stuff, and that's a good way to. That's how I sort of hone my skills in weed ID and
I'm
plant
guessing
ID.
meet some like-minded people.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. And I think in many industries, it's about who you know, and even if that person can give you some work experience, even if it's free work experience, it's still more experience than someone who has none.
Do you think, and you don't have to answer this if it's a hard one to answer, but do you think that your course is open to taking on work experience people? Or is it too complicated?
Tim does it a lot. Yeah, we do it a lot. And Tim is very good in working a program with them where they get to do a lot of different things during that week.
Kind of like I talked about with the hotel.
Exactly.
We did, four different. We ended up doing one thing each day from the Monday to Thursday, and then I got to choose what to do on the Friday. So you kind of like, I get to go back to the pastry kitchen Friday.
So housekeeping was not.
I remember. I don't know if I've ever told this story, but they had a soccer event on, and we were hanging up all the countries' soccer jerseys, and I think I put Yugoslavia's next to Serbia's or something. No awareness.
I was just about to say, started
like,
a war.
I just live in this happy little world. I'm like, I don't know, 17. I
cares?
might have even been
Doesn't
16.
matter.
I don't know.
Shit,
Like everyone loves each other, right? So I understand the world.
Yeah.
No. You gotta
Can't
get it down. So,
redo it.
yeah. So I learned a little bit about geopolitical unrest, and I learned about
which you wouldn't have thought you would have learnt from a hotel.
getting those whites really
Really
white,
white, yeah.
and how to make this amazing chocolate torte, which I can still make today.
Oh, excellent. Should ask you to bring cake next time.
Yeah.
When anyone does work experience, and we might end up with a flood of work experience students now, but Tim loves having work experience students, and they do, like, they get a chance to roll the greens or learn how to roll the greens and rake bunkers, and we're doing construction.
I don't think
that
Tim would have any problem with that. I mean, the pathways to you guys recruiting new staff are not clear and easy, and there's not people banging at the door. Yeah. And so if you can give them access to it at high school, great.
Exactly. So you're probably aware that only 1.4% of the industry is female.
I wasn't aware it was that low. I thought I was expecting it to be a little bit higher than that.
Yeah, no, 1.4%. I think it's 2.1 in America.
You know what's crazy? Like, you hear that, but if you look at even our industry, right?
Yeah,
so we've got 37 of us. Take out admin. Yeah. We've got one female. Yeah. Is that right?
2 now.
Oh, yeah, sick. Yeah. Ruby's on. Yeah, so, and it's funny because I don't not hire females because I have some preconceived idea about their brains being smaller. Like, I know they're the same size. I get it.
Yeah, but they don't apply.
They don't apply.
Yeah,
right?
I know, exactly.
And it was cool that Ruby did apply because she loves it, I think. Yeah. Like, I met with her and, talked about what she was doing, and she didn't even, and this is very much an education thing, it's probably the same as you, she didn't know that the job that she has now existed. Yeah, like, that's exactly the same as me. She's just like, this is really cool. Like, it's good. I enjoy it, because she was working at a supermarket. Yeah. And we've got a few people. Some of our best recruits recently have been ex-supermarket because they know, they understand systems and they get to work on time. In a lot of cases, they get treated like shit by customers, and they accept it. Yeah, yeah. So when we bring them in and we're like, oh, no, people can't treat you like shit here. Yeah. They're like, what? Yeah, really? I'm just used to that. I thought that's the way it goes. You mean, because Jonesy, when I said to him, he was managing one of the shops, one of the supermarkets, and he had been spat on that week. He got punched in the face. Ow. Yeah. And I said, I promise you 2 things if you come and work for me. 1, you'll never wear a tie. Yeah. And 2, you won't get stabbed by a customer. So I couldn't promise any of the staff wouldn't stab him in the back in some kind of shitty coup to try and climb the corporate ladder. But yeah.
No, I think like you said, I think a lot of females don't know jobs like this exist.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the women I've spoken to who are in the industry, they love the industry and they love being a part of it. But there are women outside the industry that don't know it exists.
I think there's a responsibility on the men in the industry to make the early stages, or even the entire point, but initially the early stages as welcoming as possible.
Yeah.
And I think that there would still be and is still some old heads around that, like to haze any new staff member, male or female.
Yeah.
And, that needs to change. And we talked about that with Rowan on the podcast that we recorded on Tuesday, that there is a changing attitude around how people get treated at work.
Yeah, yeah.
And you would hope that, it's not, hazing's not happening regardless, but especially that someone is not getting treated differently because of, anything that's outside of their control.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, I don't, and I worry, I worry sometimes that there's jobs that get awarded to someone because of gender the other way sometimes, and that we're trying to populate a board with a 50-50 gender balance, which you think about if we said, Glenelg's got a 50-50 male-female gender balance target. There's going to be 10 or 15 years where you don't have half the team.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they're not there.
Exactly.
So I think it's good what you're doing, and you probably don't realise the impact you're having, and maybe you do because you're mature.
Yeah,
like you're not.
Yeah.
You're not a kid.
People say it to me often that.
Yeah.
To see a woman in the industry.
Well, we had a table at the Open Spaces seminar that I believe were there because of you.
Yes, they were. They told me that the whole team,
the whole
booked in
biodiversity
because
team
I was there. Yeah,
and they were,
quite lovely.
That was a room with 100 people.
Yeah.
And 12 women?
Yes.
15 women?
Yeah.
And 10 of them because you were there. So I think if it's inevitable that there will be a change.
Yes.
Provided that there's conversations that keep happening,
that's right.
And that you're showing the cool things that are happening, and obviously social media has helped with that. But are the numbers in biodiversity similar? Like obviously you're talking about golf being 1.2, 1.4, 2.0. Like is biodiversity more balanced?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because I went to a recent coastal officers forum, so Green Adelaide staff, council staff, and they all get together every quarter and just talk about the issues they're having managing the coast and managing weeds and stuff. And that, I reckon that was probably half-half. Yeah. Yeah.
I felt like I kind of knew the answer to that before I asked.
Yeah, but I think that's also because that includes councils and sort of government as well.
It's funny though, even like we deal with a lot of councils, and it's still, it would be single figure percents for even in the Hort teams. Yeah. It's probably a bit better balance in the Hort teams. Yeah. But the irrigation teams are men. Yeah. Barring and I could think of examples, and you can always find outliers, and I think it is that lack of access to awareness of the job.
Yeah, exactly. Someone said to me, that you can't be what you can't see.
Yeah.
I think women don't see other women as greenkeepers, so they don't see that as a job.
I think it goes even further back. I'm thinking about I've got twins, boy-girl twins. Yeah. So I'm watching them both grow up at exactly the same time. Yeah. And what becomes societally driven, accepted norms. Yes. Lucy likes pink.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, why?
Yeah, I know.
Right? Really? Why?
Exactly.
I ask them these because I'm a challenging human being. Yeah. I'll ask challenging things to people because. I was
just going to say, is that what your wife says? You're a challenging human being.
Says it. So everyone's stuck around. So obviously brings some value to their lives. But I'll say to Connor will be like, I'm like, what's your favourite colour? He's like, blue. I said, why not? Why? Why not pink or purple or green or yellow? Pink's a girl's colour. Yeah. Like, where are you getting that from? Yeah, exactly. That's not taught in our house. So that's obviously societal.
Yeah, conditioning.
And so you take that back to their 6. So they've been learning that for the last 4 years. Yeah. So what is it that then goes, well, women are nurses and teachers and men are,
exactly.
I don't know, whatever, tree loppers and lawyers or whatever. Yeah. The balance isn't there. And I think what you said is probably the perfect way to put it, is what you can't be what you can't see. Yeah. And
the Australian Sports Turf Managers Association has a women in turf strategy, and they're trying lots of different options.
Well, and it feels like it's a multi-generational change thing. It's going to take my kids to understand that we can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Within reason,
yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, well, they've been having these special events. They had one at the Adelaide Oval before the Women Crows play, the female AFL, and they had an old women curating
Yeah,
team.
I saw that.
So that sort of stuff, I think, is helping people to see.
It's funny. It's such a hard balance because I think some of the women that are in it are like, I don't want to hear this shit. Like, I just want to be. I just want to rock up and do my job.
I know. So Tim Warren's daughter Sophie is an apprentice with us.
Yep.
Very close to qualifying.
Yep.
And,
she'll qualify.
Dad
will push it through.
That's right.
I don't mean that, guys. I'm just joking.
Yeah, well, she did say to him the other day she never ever has to go to TAFE ever again.
Yeah,
but I think he's got news for her that he wants to do some extra stuff. But anyway, she was saying to me, I don't know why there's all this stuff about me, because Syngenta filmed a Perfectionists video, so they did a Women in Turf thing with her, and she said, I don't know why there's all this fuss over me. And I said, well, firstly, you're a superintendent's daughter.
Second generation golf,
so that's interesting in itself.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're a woman in turf is a really big thing. And she said, I just want to do my job. I don't want all of this.
And it's hard because, there'll be, like, she might, it's like, when a footy player, like, you got a famous footy player who can't take drugs and go out and get drunk anymore, right?
Yes.
Because you are now considered...
Yes.
They don't sign up for that.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They're just like, I want to party. Like,
That's right.
Bad example,
but I know what you mean.
She's in the same position. Like, she might not have signed up for it, but as bad as it might feel, there's a responsibility on you now to help shine some light on... And maybe not just for women, to be honest, but for young people in general to have a pathway into these jobs.
Right.
Because they're not... There's a shortage, and it's not just golf, it's irrigation, it's landscaping.
Yeah, it is, across the
landscape
whole...
design, landscape construction, but to show, that it's there. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I hope she takes it as a positive, and I know it can be annoying.
Yeah, I think it is sometimes.
It's like...
Because she feels like she's being singled out above everyone else in the team, but it's more so that we're just trying to throw the spotlight on.
I think it would be hard, obviously being that Dad's the boss, and,
it
would be a hard... I've seen it in multi-generational businesses where the family owns the business, where it's actually harder to be recognised as great, even though you are, because you're one of the family. Yeah. And I know Coopers do well to have the generations that come through. They have to go work somewhere else. They have to get a degree in something else. So that they've gone and cut their teeth, and it's not just like, oh well,
here's a job.
Tom gets to be the boss because he's our son. So
no, I think Tim was quite conscious when he interviewed for Sophie, and I think he had me and the assistant do it so that he could be impartial. But Sophie said to me before she applied, she's like, oh, I don't know about this. And I said, Sophie, you know more about golf than anyone here. Yeah. I said, you've been raised on it. You've been raised on a golf course.
I think what you'll find in a lot of those cases is she's had to be even better than the standard.
Yeah, that's right.
Because she doesn't want to leave anything on the table. So no judgment can be made.
But she actually is, and she does really enjoy working in the industry. She went over to volunteer for the Australian Open. And she cut one of the fairways, and apparently someone said, oh, who cut that fairway? And she said, oh, I did. Why do you want to know? And they said, because it's unbelievably straight. You've done a great job. Yeah.
Well, you see in the mining sector, they're like recruiting women as heavily as they can in machinery operation, because they're seeing the maintenance and the damage on machine has becoming less of a problem because of the... I don't know, the natural tendencies not to change gears as aggressively or take corners as whatever.
And actually look after stuff. Because, a couple of people have told me that, they have women and they have less accidents and they have less problems in the machine. They're more thoughtful. They don't do as much stupid stuff as the boys do.
Oh, yeah. Well, you see those like those things on Instagram
like
where you're like, this is why men don't live as long as it's like jumping off of a building.
Exactly. Or driving in a cart in a golf course and into a swollen river or something.
Oh, I've done some stupid shit in golf carts. I've got to be careful. I've got to be careful what I can say, because I don't know if we deal with this golf course, but I remember once going down a very wet hill and hitting the brakes and turning, and the whole golf cart just kind of sliding. I think it might have been at Mount Osmond, might have been at Teacher Gully, but oh god.
It's like a Fast and Furious
We
situation.
should not be allowed to have them.
No,
right? Like, it's not.
But there should be some instructions or something.
I think they should just charge you have a driver, like they do in Bali. They're just like, we'll have someone drive for you. Cause
that's a good idea. Because then we can be guaranteed
should not be
nothing
allowed
goes
to be
wrong.
Here. So, thank you so much for coming in.
No worries.
I hope this has given you an opportunity to share your passion and, you know, obviously a job that's probably being under recruited and under recognised and under utilised. If people want to, are you open to people reaching out to you if they want to ask questions?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I get people all the time sending me stuff.
Like Insta
DM on Insta or message on LinkedIn.
So we'll link that up in the comments or in the in the description. Yeah. And hopefully, you know, even if, you know, this podcast helps one person do something differently at home, or even you know, look at moving into the space. Yeah. Then
just planting a few native grasses in a small space. Like, it doesn't have to be huge, but just start somewhere. Yeah. Yep. Or some native wildflowers or something. Yep.
Thanks to Diggers for getting behind this and being our seed sponsor. Please ship your seeds here and we'll make sure Monina gets them.
We need some better seeds, clearly. You're choosing the wrong varieties.
Do you have anything you need to add? You got anything you guys are promoting at the moment, or?
No.
You got any events coming up that you're going to be talking about?
We've got our course enhancement plan going well, and thanks to Tim and Rob for letting me be here today, I guess. And
thanks, guys.
Yeah.
That's right. Rob will call me inside the next 60 days and be like, hi, we've got our junior foundation.
Oh, probably,
We'd like you to remember how Monina came out? Yep,
right.
Yep, thanks, mate.
There's probably stuff I don't know about going on because I've got my head in my biodiversity stuff, my Green Adelaide grant. But
we last time they had a golf day, we were too slow to respond and it sold out.
Oh, no.
And that's rare. It shows how much support the club has. So.
Yeah. I found at the recent turf grass conference, I say to people, I'm Monina from Glenelg Golf, and people instantly recognise the brand. So
yeah, it's cool.
So it's great.
You can have your cake now. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. I've been wanting to eat
Monina
it,
bought her own rider. There was like M&Ms and cake and so
with the brown ones in, not removed.
Yes, I still don't understand the reference, but we'll talk about that later.
We'll look that one up.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.